Thank you. Welcome, and appreciate your coming. I want to call the meeting to order. So we'll stand for a moment of silence and then the Pledge of Allegiance. This will be a good time to remember the events of 20 years ago this weekend. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Secretary, could we have the roll call, please?
Jamie Girardi,
He's absent.
Don Anderson,
Here.
Peter Hansel,
Here.
George Losias,
Here.
Christopher Poole,
Here.
Chris Williams,
Here.
Attorney Charles Gray.
Here. And you want to have the proof of publication? Read that.
The items were published on the Tampa Bay Times on August 25, 2021, or by affidavit of Secretary.
Okay. I don't believe we have any minutes to approve. Is that correct? So I will give you, for anybody who hasn't been at a meeting, I'll give you a quick summary of what we do here. The Planning Commission is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. We meet twice monthly. We serve as the local planning agency. We hold public hearings and transmit to the Board of County Commissioners recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments, land development code amendments, rezonings, and conditional use requests. Planning Commission is the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests, and certain alternative standard requests. However, final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. If anyone is in opposition to any comprehensive plan amendment, land development code amendment, rezoning, conditional use, or any item where the Planning Commission transmits a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend the appropriate Board of County Commission meeting. For those of you who are not familiar with the procedures, we have three sections. We have continuances. Those are items wherein the staff or applicant have recommended that we continue the item to a specific date, or even sometimes a date uncertain. It's been our tradition to approve those requests unless there are extenuating circumstances. Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay. So then we have a consent agenda, and we'll go through the consent agenda item by item and recognize the applicant and ask if there's any objections. If you have an objection to anything on the continuances, raise your hand and then we'll pull it from continuance, and it'll be heard with the regular items. Following that, everything that remains on consent will be voted on at one time and approved, and those of you who had remained on consent are free to go, or you're welcome to stay, whichever you like. Then we have the regular items, and those are the items that we're going to bring to the floor today for discussion. The applicant will speak, and anybody that has concerns or objections will be heard, and we'll give you the more specifics about that. The applicants will have 3 minutes to make their presentation, and anybody that has questions or objections will have 3 minutes to come speak. And I just ask that if you come up as an objector and speak or have a question, that we not do the same objection and the same question over and over. Let's try to get through it so we can get your questions answered. I think we've had one request for extra time, if I'm not mistaken, right? And other than that, we have none. This is
correct, Mr. Chair. There's a request for 20 minutes for item P9 from Mr. Joel Tu and his team.
Okay, thank you, Denise. And so Also, I wanted to let everybody know that if you have a phone with you, which most of you probably do, this is a good chance, an opportunity to put it on the silent position or turn it off so that it doesn't interrupt the proceedings. So before we start the regular meeting, is there anyone here to speak or have a question about something that's not on today's agenda? Okay, I don't see anyone. So anybody who plans to give testimony today or intends to come up and speak at the microphone, would you please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and all you got?
Okay, thank you. I think we're off. Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commission members, Denise Hernandez, Planning and Development. First item we're going to go over is item PC1, which is PDD 21CU24. It's for K&M 130 Holdings LLC. This is a request for continuance to the October 7, 21 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 p.m. in Dade City.
Okay. Is the applicant present?
Applicant is virtually present.
Okay. Anyone here to object? I see no objections. Let's go ahead to the next one.
Sure. Following item is PC2, PDD 21CU42, Focus Ford Solutions, Fields Farm, for a motocross track for personal use in an AC district. Your continuance memo has the incorrect continuance date because this is an item that's on the east side. So the request is actually to continue to the October 7th, 21 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City. Not September 30th as it states on your agenda memo, or September 28th. rather.
All right. And is the applicant present? Applicant's virtually present?
The applicant is virtually present.
Okay. Anyone here to object? See no objections? I think those are the only two continuance items.
That is correct.
Okay. So can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue PC1 and PC2 to their respective dates.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, signify the same. Motion carries. Okay, number 3.
PC3 is PDD 217344. It's in the rezoning in the name of Adrian Phillip MPD Master Planning and Development. Adrian Phillip Overpass LLC. It's a rezoning from R1MH, Single Family Mobile Home District, to an MPUD Master Planning and Development District to allow up to 315,000 square feet of commercial entitlements on approximately 37.588 acres. It comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions as included in your agenda packet.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? No objections? Next.
Following item PC4 will be pulled. We do have Ms. Nancy Hazelwood and Ms. Alma Costin here to speak on the item.
Are there the applicants or?
They are objectors to the item, or folks who want to speak on the item.
Okay. All right.
PC5 will also be pulled. I do have Mr. David Crouch here to speak on the item as well. So if we can move on to PC6.
Yes.
PDD 217556 in the name of Eddie Perez, 6940 Main Street, for a change in zoning for an R2 low-density residential district to a C2 general commercial district. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval.
All right. Is the applicant present?
The applicant is physically present.
Anyone here to object? See no objectors? Okay.
PC7 is PDD 217558, 6016 Delaware Ave Land Trust, 11836 Little Road. It's for a change in zoning from an R1MH Single Family Mobile Home District to a C2 General Commercial District. And it comes to you with a recommendation of approval.
And the applicant's present?
The applicant is physically present here.
All right. Anyone here to object? No objections?
I apologize, that applicant is actually virtually present, Mr. O'Brien.
Okay.
I just want to correct that, but he is virtually present.
Thank you. All right. So that's 7.
On
Okay.
PC8, I wanted to do a small presentation. Do you on that item?
Can we do
Is
consent first?
that finishes consent, right? Or is
Yeah,
that-
I think we should do the consent and then
Yeah.
first.
Oh, yeah.
But I have one question. For all of the consent items, there's nobody on WebEx in opposition?
There's no one on WebEx in opposition.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of PC3, PC6, and PC7.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
We move on to item PC4.
Okay.
William Devine, Planning and Development, PDD 21-7546, in the name of Floyd Filming Groves LLC. It is the zoning amendment to AC Agricultural District to ER2 Estate Residential District.
Mr. Chairman, I think that file number, I thought it was 7547, not 46.
I'm sorry, you are correct. So PDD 21-7547.
Okay.
The subject site is currently located in the northwest corner of the intersection of Platt Road and Blatton Road. The subject site contains single-family dwellings and a barn on approximately 38.02 acres. The applicant proposes to develop the property in conformance with the ER2 Estate Residential District standards. The subject site has a future land use classification of Res 1. The surrounding area is characterized by rural and estate residential development, the Mountain View Solar Facility, currently under construction, and agricultural pursuits. The owner/applicant shall be required to comply with the Northeast Pasco Rural Protection Overlay. And on August 3rd, 2021, the owner/applicant held a neighborhood meeting. The surrounding zoning to the north is ER2 and AC. To the east and south is AR, and to the west is AR5. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. So the future land use to the northeast, south, and west is all Res 1. Catty corner to the southwest is AGR. And this is a look at access to the site. And this is coming with a Planning and Development Department recommendation for approval.
All right, thank you. Any questions? If not, I'll hear the applicant. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Clark Hobby, Hobby and Hobby PA, 109 North Breast Street, Tampa, Florida, have been sworn. I'll be brief. The area that this property is located in is Res 1. The Philman family was interested in rezoning some of their property in the area from its ag condition to something that was a little denser, but they wanted to keep in and be consistent with the area around them. So we looked at the zoning in the area. There's some ER2 immediately adjacent to it. We could have gone down as small as 1 acre lots, but we chose 2.5 acres, or 2.5 times greater than the comp plan would have allowed. We had a community meeting, no one objected to it, and I think the folks who are here really just wanted to say they thanked us for doing something in keeping with Northeast Pasco, but I'll be here to answer any other questions after they speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. All right, anybody else here for the applicant? Okay, so is there anyone here that has questions that would like to get up and speak? Please come forward. We understand you want to thank the applicant.
Northeast Pasco, the whole area should be 2.5 acres.
I'm sorry, we need your name, and address.
My name is Alma Costner. My name is Alma Costner, and I live at 16995 Spring Valley Road in Dade City. I also have a lot that's abutting this, 2 lots. The lots I have on Mountain View Estates, and it's a lot, I think it's 34 and 35. And what it is, if you absolve Mountain View, I don't want mine absolved because Mountain View takes up more than what they have, what they're proposing. So I just want to make sure that my property is 129 by 200. And so it will never qualify for 2.5 acres. So I just want to make sure if you do a blanket on Mountain View, only do it to his property only and not mine, because mine hasn't been built on yet. And so that was the one thing. But I do think all of Blanton should be 2.5 acre tracts, because this is a rural area and we have worked probably 25 years to protect it as a rural area. And I have been to so many meetings, and I don't get paid one dime from going here, going to Newport Richey, trying to protect the area. And unfortunately, we've got that solar farm, which I think should never have been there, should have been on condemned land, but there's nothing I can do about it. But I just hope that Northeast Pasco is protected in the future, and that all the tracks, there's tons of acreage out there, and I just hope that all that acreage out there remains in no less than 2.5 acres, because this is a rural area, and that's what we'd like to keep it.
Thank you very much. So if you, we could step up there, if you just give your name and address. Thank you.
Nancy Hazewood, 34110 Nice Place, Dade City, Florida. This area is in the Northeast Pasco Rural Protected Area, like Alma said, and I consider 2.5 to be a transitional density back to lower acreages, hopefully. I applaud Philman Groves, the staff, and Mr. Hobby for doing this and something. I think this is the first time I've ever stood up here and said, wow, somebody really did something that belongs in the Northeast Rural Area Plan. When most of the things that come up are things that the neighbors and the thousands of people that live out there didn't buy into when they moved here. They heard that it was the Northeast Rural Protected Area and came because of that. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for coming. Is there anybody else? Please come forward.
My name is Susan Meinhardt. My address is 36644 Blanton Road, Dade City, Florida, 33523. And I am curious if, let me just be more as specific as I can. Of course, that's what you want. I have one piece of property. It's 3 acres on Blanton Road, Mountain View, and my property has two deeds, actually, because there is a road called Oak Street. Has anybody brought about Oak Street? I understand it goes from Platte Road, goes straight north, and ends in the middle of the property that's right next to me, which is Ed Blumel and Libby Blumel. Anyway, I was told I can't use it. The road will never exist, but it's on my deed. So I'd like to know if that road is going to stay a real road, because I want access to the 1 acre that's at the end of my 3.
Well, I don't think I can answer that question. I don't even know if it's subject to the subject of this particular hearing.
Well, Platte Road
Maybe
is-
the county can help you with that
So
one.
Platte Road is part of what the applicant may be accessing, but I think either staff or the applicant will have to address her question, because I'm not sure what road she's talking about.
I can help.
I can help.
Yes, ma'am. Again, Clark Hobby, for the record. I believe what she's talking about, we discovered during this zoning process that there's a very old plat, I think it's from 1915, 1920, that affects a good portion of this area as you go over the hill on Blanton Road. And to tell you how little we knew about it, I believe the one house that the family member lives in on the site, there's a platted street going right through the middle of the house. So at some point, we will have to, for the portion of our property, probably vacate those old streets there on the plat, but they don't exist. Well, we can discuss afterwards about whether we could include other properties on it. Some neighbors want to be clear that it doesn't affect their legal access, but we can take care of that, you know, when there's any development on the site. I would say this, the family doesn't have any immediate plans for development anyway, so it might be years down the road. But I do know the portion of the plat for the subject property should be vacated, or at least the streets, because clearly we don't want the one family member to lose their house because there's a platted street going through a portion of it. But we'll happy to chat afterwards about
It's
it.
not through a house, the top 2.5 acres, which is what faces.
Excuse me, I hate to interrupt you, but we can't have this off-site conversations because it has to be recorded. So my suggestion is, this is a topic that doesn't really involve us, and if you can meet afterwards with.
Yes, sir.
The other thing I would add is that the vacation of that plat goes through a separate process that goes to the Board of County Commissioners. It's really somewhat unrelated to the zoning request.
Right.
Right.
So there's another opportunity to weigh in on the scope of their vacation.
I'll
Okay.
follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
All right.
I feel like I have a voice, and I feel like it's not being heard.
Wow.
Ma'am, and to be clear, your voice will be heard, but this isn't the proceeding to discuss it. There's another hearing to talk about the vacation of the plat that will occur. Mr. Hobby, have you even filed your application to vacate the plat?
We have not filed.
Okay, so maybe when you file your application to vacate the plat, you can notify her that you've done that.
All right. Thank you very much. I guess there's no one else to speak. So, hear a motion?
Move to approve PC
4?
4 and
Just 4.
just 4?
Okay, so we have a motion to approve item 4, PC 4, as submitted.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion
Ma'am,
carries.
he called for public comment. It's up to the chair. Do you want to still hear from her?
We need to keep moving. We just need to move on. I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. Okay. Okay, well, next.
PC 5, PDD 21-7555. It is the zoning amendment in the name of DMMD LLC MI Homes Joy Drive. It is a rezoning from AC Agricultural District to R4 High Density Residential District. The subject site is located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Kristen Lane and Joy Drive. The subject site is currently undeveloped on approximately 20 acres. The applicant proposes to develop 54 single-family detached dwellings in conformance with the R4 district standards, zoning district standards. The subject site has a future land use classification of Res 3, residential 3 dwelling units per acre under the comprehensive plan. The surrounding area is characterized by low-density residential, several platted subdivisions, including Oakstead and Wood Lake Preserve and Bexley, and public, semi-public uses and agricultural pursuits. Access to the property is from Joy Drive, a county-maintained local roadway with approximately 30 feet of right-of-way. The surrounding zoning to the north is AC, to the east is AR, to the south is an MPUD, Oakstead MPUD, and to the west is AC. The future land use to the north, east, south, and west is all Res 3. And this is a look at the access to the site. And this is coming with a recommendation from the Planning and Development Department for approval.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Clark Hobby, for the record again. So the subject site, as staff pointed out, is in the urban service area in the South Market area. Joy Drive, some of you may be familiar with, others may not. It's a small county-maintained road that breaks off of Lake Patience. There have been 3 enormous MPUDs approved in the last 15 years in this area, and that are the biggest influence on the site. But I'd also say the school, and then more particularly, there have been 2 recent MPUDs that are approved almost directly south of this on some of the Law family's property that have very small lots and have quite a bit of density between the 2 MPUDs, one of which was just approved by the board at its last session. And what we're seeking here is a R4 rezoning, which the smallest the lots could be would be 60 feet wide, and that's larger than the lots that were just approved and the 2 other rezonings. So what we feel like what we're doing is in keeping with the area and the growth pattern for Land O'Lakes, and we're happy to answer any questions that you or our neighbors may have.
Thank you. All right, is anybody here to speak? Pardon me? I didn't hear what he said.
He said he's on you to speak.
Oh,
My name is David Crouch. I live at 4115 Kristen Lane. I live directly behind that. I'm not here about the flooding issue of my property, but it's a flooding issue because Oakstead built their property 1.5 foot higher. The water coming from Little Lake Thomas, Big Lake Thomas, comes down through Drexel, comes across Kinlands, all through there, comes in there, and that's the headwater of the Anclote River. It dead ends right there at Lake Basin Road. Swiftmud said, we got more water and we got flow. So they're not gonna fix the Oakstead property, and it floods. They're gonna put that property there, it's gonna back water up on all of us. We're gonna be flooded again. So Oakstead, he said that, the law property was proposed. Well, that's part of the drainage problem. If it used to go around and go out to Morgan Lake, well, now it don't really do that. Now the water's dropping back into the north of Lake Basin Road is flooded. It's gonna always be flooded, and they're right there with us. Now, there's gonna be another 40 acres coming up. They're gonna flood us there too. There's no water. It was 85 acres, what was a swamp that I live on. Now it's 150 acres. And right now I'm at high water. Any more water added to us is gonna be flooded. So this land was proposed before. We rode with Pat Mallory, Mr. Whitman, an engineer, and it was proposed 20 to 25 homes on that property already. Now we're changing it to an R4. Just wanna know how you can change that and keep flooding us. We're gonna be flooded. There's nothing gonna change because Oakstead is 1.5 foot higher. Water does not flow across there.
okay.
Any questions about that?
Any questions for anyone?
There's a flood issue there. It's always gonna be a flood issue until they do something about Oakstead, and they're not gonna do anything. So, and the water comes, Little Lake Thomas, Big Lake Thomas, houses, there's been 5 houses. I lost my house, I lived there 35 years. Oakstead flooded my house, I lost my house. No insurance, but I have 150 signatures. We can file a class action lawsuit. We will do that if you keep doing what you're doing. You need to stop building north of Lake Patient Road like we're trying to do. Jurassi's got 40 acres, they're gonna do the same thing. Mr. Law's Lake, I sent a video about the Law's property. Okay, he said they're gonna make the water drain around that ditch and go into Morgan Lake. Morgan Lake used to flow across 41 with a 13-mile run in which went to North Hillsborough County. But when they widened 41, they closed off that water flowed across there. Now it goes to Drexel. Goes to Leonard Road. If you're familiar with the flooding we have there, it's because the county is not doing their job. Just kind of, let me settle down a little bit. It kind of irritates me about what the county is allowing people to do to us, but nobody fixes the problem. If I ask the county to clean out the drainage, they say we don't do any maintenance work, but we definitely got a problem there.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have anybody from the county here to speak to drainage?
Yes, we should have Will Coon on the line.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Will Pedestrian here in Carpine. site. There are flood zone, floodplain designation on the site. So it is susceptible to flooding based on FEMA. And in accordance to the land development code, the impacts to the floodplain flood zone area needs to be mitigated for in accordance to LDC section 92.2 G5 for floodplain encroachment. Obviously, during the design phase of the project, all those things that related to drainage issues, off-site drainage, has to be ensured that there's no negative impact based on those off-site areas. So that will be part of the analysis done by the engineer of record who designs the project and so forth. So those things need to be taken into consideration.
Well, I don't know if anybody on the dais here has any questions for you, Will, but, evidently there's some testimony that people on the ground there are experiencing a lot of flooding issues, and the county is not willing to address any of the maintenance that they feel should be done in order to alleviate those problems. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, maintenance aspect of it, unfortunately, I represent the development current planning review side of it for the development. However, maintenance are mostly associated with the public works department and the stormwater department. And usually those get addressed through those divisions. So I can't really speak to that, but I would refer to the public works department in regards to the maintenance aspect of it.
Mr. Chair, I think their general position is they will not maintain drainage ways that are on private property. So it may, or if they're supposed to be maintained by an HOA or CDD. So I have no idea where these drainage ways are or who owns them, and that's part of the issue. Maybe Mr. Hobby knows, but I suspect if the county refused to maintain them, it's because they're not county property. I do have one question for Will. Will, is this an open or closed drainage basin?
Well, looking at that, I difficult to determine it open, based on the topography of the land and surrounding area. It appeared kind of really flat, and there's obviously wetlands. If you come on the wetland layer, which category one wetlands directly south and north of Lake Patient Road and north of Joel and Kristen. So it really needs to be analyzed and determined by the engineer to really see if there's a clear open basin scenario. But based on my cursory review of it, based on Pasco map, it needs to be either closed or very constricted. So that needs to be during the time of the design and review of the project.
And so if it's closed, is there a higher standard?
Yes, there is. If it's a closed basin in our land development code, there's a higher standard for addressing those in the design to ensure that there's no adverse impact.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Will. Thank you. Any other questions about that? All right, anyone else that would like to come up and speak?
Thank you, I'm Deborah Moore.
Wait, Deborah, till you get up here so the reporter can get your name and your address.
Yeah, I'm Deborah Moore, and I live at 4116 Kristen Lane, and it's an 800-foot property, 6-acre property.
Let us fix your microphone there a little bit.
Okay, anyway, we live on Kristen Lane at the, right adjacent to where you're talking. It's 6¼ acres. We have one home. We live in a cypress basin, a cypress tree swamp. We've said this for forever. We've always flooded. We've had periods where we have nowhere to take the little dog to walk. The water gets so wet, the whole area. David lives on the 20 acres adjacent. We have swamp between us. This is the swamp basin for the whole area. And you see stuff on a piece of paper, but you don't see what surrounds it. We have no rural. We're at the pinched end vice grip thing from Oakstead, from the north, from the east, the houses that are gonna go by animal control. But this acre, we're the wildlife quarter.
Could I just ask you just to slow down a bit? I'm
I know,
having a hard time hearing you.
Kristen Lane is the wildlife corridor
Okay.
right there that goes across to Oakstead. And you guys are crunching this down. If I could show you something, please, just to look at where this property actually is.
Is that something that you want us to look at? If you want to, can you give it to us?
Yes.
Okay, if you could start over there. Can I have a motion to receive and file?
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
And then we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
In 2006, we went through the same.
Let's go back to the microphone, please.
In 2006, Burkhaw and Associates tried to put 56 houses in that grove, and we went to Swift Mud, we had all kinds of talk. They said they control the flow, they control the rate, but they can't control the volume, and that, no, they couldn't guarantee that, no, it wouldn't get worse if this to go in. So it was denied in 2006. We're back like everything was ever talked about. We could have a circus here with people around the neighborhood, but I said I would come in and calmly talk to you guys, let you see where this property is, see how rural we are. We have no, in this entire block, we have no high-density homes. Only what Oakstead, we're right across from the elementary school, which we were glad about, was in a bunch of houses, kids talking and playing, that was not so bad. But this grove, we have so many deer that go through, they cross from the wetlands to the north and to the wetlands to the south. This grove is a huge crossing point for them. We see them in herds going through here. And being the wildlife corridor, we need some exceptions here. And this is the flooding from Lake Patience Road, you can just glance at it. Wet, wet, wet.
Did you want us to take that?
I'll submit that one too, sure.
Okay. Did you hand it?
Here's another motion, please, to receive and file.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
My biggest point to stress is that we are in a flooding basin here, but like this is a huge problem. Anyway, where's that little piece of property? Right to the,
Ma'am,
We
we
can't hear you.
Go back to the microphone.
anyway, our property is right at, sorry.
I hope you're not gonna receive and
I'm
file
not.
every one of those.
No, no, there are copies in case you want to pass one.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, my biggest picture, I just want to show you and I'll go away. And pray that you guys will make the right decision like you did in 2006. Anyway, my husband's Edward Moore, and he's done research for this so much.
That means your time's up.
My husband passed away last year.
So
He's
just to
done
wrap it up real quick.
That's it, just wetlands, and just putting this.
Okay.
They're wanting to put this right in the middle like a dinosaur footprint, and I hope you'll deny it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak? Okay. Mr. Hobby, hopefully you can
I
shed
can
some
try
light
to
on
help a
it.
little bit. As you all know, this is just a Euclidean rezoning. This is not a site plan we're dealing with here. We do have our engineer here, and he's listening to these comments. He tells me he believes it's actually an open basin. This will be determined definitively during the site planning process. But he also tells me that he will, ground truth by walking the property and looking at the outfall structures. To the extent that there are any problems, they'll be identified prior to and leading up to the site plan approval process. But, if it's identified as a closed basin, we'll have to comply with any special rules that the county has for basins of special concern if it applies to that. But other than that, we heard similar testimony in the law MPUD a few weeks ago where people were worried about the drainage coming from the north side of Lake Patience to the south. We will have to deal with that during the site planning process using best engineering methods to make sure that we compensate for any floodplain impacts that we have and to make sure that we can't impede the historic flow through the property or exacerbate flooding that may be happening to our neighbors. We're prepared to do that. I didn't think there was any testimony that directly related to the zoning that's before you. So other than that, happy to answer any questions. We appreciate your support.
Anybody have any questions up here?
So is the flow coming south to this property, or do you know?
I don't know, but the testimony in the previous MPUD was that it was flowing from the north side, some of the lakes up that area, to the south.
And if it is, you're gonna have to, obviously you have to accommodate that.
We can't block the flow.
Right,
That's
correct.
right, the pre-development flow cannot be blocked.
So have you, in light of that, have you considered, like an R3 instead of an R4?
I don't think that would make any difference. We have to use good engineering practices regardless of the lot sizes. The lot sizes won't materially change that analysis. It's just engineering the site to make sure we're holding enough of our own water on site and that we're not blocking any, if there is north to south flow, we can't block the pre-development flow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. I'm sorry, what? Okay, listen, I asked before if somebody wanted to come up and speak. We've got to have some continuity here, or we'll be going back and forth all day long. So, please. I don't want anybody to talk from the back of the room.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, son.
That you know, you're gonna sell my Yakuza games, what that means, to get wet out the house. My wrestling shirt.
He's doing fine. If you'd please not stop talking back there.
That's okay.
Can you just, could somebody just help him get closer to the microphone so he could be heard? Thank you.
Yep. My wrestling shirt that you know, to get with the peoples out of the houses.
It's okay. Take a deep breath. You're fine.
Yeah, for my Xbox games of Yakuza Remastered to play the song J-Ho.
Go ahead.
A house of flood and chills.
Go ahead, son.
Spread the Japanese stuff of my Yakuza games. Love you lots. And sweet hugs.
Go ahead. Anything else?
All the lovely memories we loved, the question land of my mom.
You have 1 more minute. Go ahead. Keep going.
My friends calling and for bowling, Daniel.
Go right ahead. You're doing fine.
Okay. You're welcome.
All done? Thank you very much for coming. Did you get his name and address? Could you please get it from his family over there when you need it? All right.
Mr. Hobby, did you want to provide an additional rebuttal?
Okay, yeah, I just like to make sure everybody understands, and I know you're feeling very passionate about it. I understand how you're feeling about not being flooded and so forth. That's always a concern. You know, and it's always a problem for us because it's not something that we decide here. All we really decide is whether it is a compatible zoning use. And because they have to go through a lot of other stages after us to get to the point where they can actually build anything on that property. And you can be notified of each of those stages so you have an opportunity for your input. And one of the things is the engineering phase. And that's all about what do they do with the water that comes on their site when they build, and where it goes, how it flows, and so forth. And that's really where you need to have most of your input. So I want you to understand that we only deal with a very narrow question on this property. So I don't want you to feel like we're ignoring your concerns, because we're not. We're concerned about it too. It's just that we don't have the authority to address drainage issues. Okay? Anybody else have any comments?
My only comment would be flooding. We heard an issue several weeks back about flooding within the county, and that's something that, that is a engineering issue more than anything else. That's why I will move for approval of this particular PC5.
I'll second that.
Sir, I already made a motion. We're gonna move forward. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion
A second?
and we have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, okay? All right, I think we're at 7,
PC 8.
8?
Yep.
8, okay.
Denise Hernandez, Planning and Development, item PC 8 is PDD 21, 0553.
Yep,
So this particular item is a modification or an amendment to the Land Development Code based on one of the many preemptions that were handed down by the legislature in 2021. This particular preemption included, it's Chapter 2021 and 178 Laws of Florida, which is creating 163.3205 Florida statutes, which limits how we can deal with solar facilities. So basically, as you may recall, back in 2018, the Board of County Commissioners adopted and you found consistent with the comprehensive plan, Ordinance 1818, which established solar electric power collection facilities, so solar farms, as special exception uses in agricultural zoning designations and permitted uses in C3, I1, and I2. So this last legislative session in 2021, the legislature said that solar facilities is what they're calling them. They are to be permitted uses in all agricultural zoning designations and all agricultural land use classifications. So before you is a modification to the Land Development Code, which basically what it does is that I'll just go through some of the highlights. So basically it renames solar electric power collection facility and solar farm to a solar facility, which is consistent with what the legislature calls it. It adds solar facility as a principal permitted use in all agricultural zoning designations. So basically in AC, agricultural district, AC1, agricultural district, AR, agricultural residential district, AR1, agricultural residential district, AR5, agricultural residential district, and AR5MH, agricultural residential district. It adds solar facility as a special exception use. Remember, it was previously a permitted use, now it's a special exception use because it's now available in all those other agricultural classifications. So it adds it as a special exception use in C3, I1, I2, and again, removes it as a permitted use in said district. And it also adds landscaping and buffering, which is something that the legislature said we can do. We can add landscaping and buffering as a specific use. So as long as we treat it as other similar uses and we're treating them similarly to electrical substations, distribution electrical substations. So that's going to be a modification. Oh, I hear myself much better now. Modification to 905.2. And then it also defines solar facility consistent with Florida statutes. And everywhere the term solar electric power collection facility and solar farm is used, we're replacing that with solar facility and adds that to the definition of minor public, semi-public facilities. This went to the horizontal roundtable interested parties meeting on August 18, 2021. There were no comments from that group. So today we're asking you to find a proposed ordinance amendments consistent with the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan and recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. This is going to the Board of County Commissioners for first reading on September 28th at 1:30 in Newport Richey and for adoption on October 12th at 1:30 in Dade City. And I'm here for any questions you may have.
any questions from the desk?
I do, just for clarification, so can I ask why it's being removed as a principal permitted use?
It's being removed as a principal permitted use for a couple of reasons. One reason is because it is actually now permitted in so many other zoning
Okay.
districts. And also because looking at C3, I1, and I2, those are districts that the Board of County Commissioners has specifically stated that they want employment generating uses there. So we just listed it as a special exception so that perhaps that they can place conditions on it.
Okay, good enough.
Very good. Any other questions? Anyone else here to speak on this? All right, if not, can we make a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item P9 on today's agenda, I'll go ahead and read the title of it. There is a small correction that's included. Item P9 is a zoning amendment, 7 Oaks MPUD Master Plan, Unit Development Parcel S19, and on the agenda it says SB Associates Limited Partnership. That's actually a typo. The ownership is DD/56 LLC as all, so we will correct that on the upcoming agenda. To continue with the title, the rezoning request from an MPUD master plan unit development to an MPUD master plan unit development to modify the master plan to allow the conversion of retail, commercial entitlements, multifamily entitlements on parcel S19. Yes, for the record, Nectarios Pitos, Planning and Development Department, for the record.
Okay.
Should advance this. So yeah, 7 Oaks MPD parcel S19 is PUD 217507. And the applicant is proposing to modify the 7 Oaks MPUD master plan to add multifamily as an allowed alternate use on parcel S19, utilizing the improved land use improvements in nature. And currently, the allowed primary use on parcel S19 is retail, and the allowed alternate use is office. Parcel S19 is partially built out and contains a major retailer, various small retail shops, and some out parcel.
Mr. Peters, can I stop you for a second? Because I got a text from somebody who's watching online saying they can't hear you. So can we do anything about volume? I just don't want this to continue if we can't.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I don't know.
Yeah, he's coming through clear on the web, so I have a separate audio. It's hard to hear back here. It's not here, it's hard to hear.
Speak again, Terry. Let's see. Try again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Can we hear you in the back of the room?
Can
No.
you hear us okay?
Yes, sir.
But you can't hear Terry. Okay.
That mic is better, please.
Should I switch positions to another point?
I think he speaks a little louder.
Well, it may be better if Mr. Peters, just of course, we have the applicant and others that need to speak at the same mic, so we're gonna have an issue. Do we have another mic?
I'm gonna check if we have a handheld mic.
What's that mic right over there? Someone sticking up?
I don't know.
Denise, what's that microphone right over there? Behind the court reporter. There we go. That's got a red light on it at least. Yeah, that sounds like it works. Go ahead, push it, there you go.
Test, test.
Yes, it should be,
Okay. Well, I'll back up a slide in case they didn't hear me. So, Seven Oaks MPD parcel S19 is PDD 217507. And the applicant is proposing to modify the Seven Oaks MPUD to add multifamily as an allowed alternate use on parcel S19, utilizing the approved land use equivalency matrix. And currently, the allowed primary use on parcel S19 is retail, and the allowed alternate use is office. And parcel S19 is partially built out and contains a major retail, very small retail shops, and some out parcels. And here's an aerial that illustrates the major retailer. Let's see, does this work? Over here to the east, north is up, and then the out parcels are to the south along State Road 56. Parcel S19 is outlined in the red, and immediately to the north and immediately to the west are office condos. And beyond those, further north, begins residential development of various types. And I'll go and broadly describe the general area context in just a minute, but before I do that, I want to illustrate the zoning here, which this map indicates the zoning being the MPUD for the Seven Oaks development. And then this map is indicating the future land use for this particular area, covering all of the Seven Oaks development within this portion as Res 3. So this map is an illustration of the entire master plan of Seven Oaks. It's generally, one might describe it as a triangle to the north and a square to the south. What it is basically I-75 along the west boundaries, Bruce B. Downs along the east boundary, and then along the south boundary where it makes a right angle, where our subject site, parcel S19, is located, is State Road 56. And the broad characterization for the area is that much of the economic development potential is mainly located along State Road 54, which is to the north. It's just beyond this point here. If I can get my thing to work. All the way up here, State Road 54 is essentially up here. And State Road 56, which is to the south, immediately up along parcel S19. And the Bruce B. Downs corridor that runs along the eastern boundary of Seven Oaks has not historically seen the same economic development potential that the State Road 54 and the State Road 56 corridors have seen for the county. So on August 19, 1986, the BCC approved the Saddlebrook Village Development of Regional Impact, the DRI, and the Development Order, Resolution number 86258, and the subsequent MPUD. The MPUD and the master plan have been modified several times since the original approval to add uses, modify uses, and to revise primary and alternate approved uses and associated land use equivalency matrix. The most recent modification was in November of 2019, which allowed a brewery as an allowed use, which I believe was along the State Road 56 area to the west of parcel S19. As proposed, the modifications to the MPUD master plan are found to be inconsistent with the provisions of the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan as detailed in the agenda memo and the analysis contained in memo OEG 21-1084, Seven Oaks Parcel S19 Fiscal Impact Summary, which is included in the civic, in your agenda packets that was distributed via civic clerk. So I'll briefly go through each of these. Presently, Seven Oaks is developed as a mixed-use community with residential office and commercial uses and recreational facilities. The proposed land use change from commercial office to residential multifamily is not consistent with policy through 187 and policy flu standing for future land use, 1810 of the comprehensive plan. In addition, it is not consistent with policy ED, economic development, 144 and 162. So I'll go through this and talk a little bit about each of these policies. Policy flu 187 talks about the contribution a development makes to the county in terms of the revenue generating potential of a project. Mainly it notes the developments should contribute more revenue than they will consume in services. Residential projects tend to consume more in services than generate revenue because by nature they are the places where taxpayers live and demand various governmental services such as water parks, fire rescue, etc., etc. An independent analysis was conducted using a regional economic modeling incorporated analysis, the REMI analysis, and a memo from the Office of Economic Growth, OEG 21-1084, which I noted earlier, summarizes the findings. The memo is attached in the agenda memo packet for this project, but we can bring it up on the overhead if we can take a moment to do that. Yeah, just the tables. As they're bringing it up, the memo will focus in on the tables that the memo is highlighting, and I'll give you a brief summary of the tables. So the memo determined that the proposed multifamily project for 320 apartments will generate about $188,375 in county revenue over a 10-year average. The current MPUD entitlements for the subject property will generate $743,375 in county revenue over a 10-year average. And even if we considered the construction phase of the project, the analysis noted that the multifamily project at this location would generate $431,700 versus $654,200 for the current entitlements. The memo also shows similar characteristics in gross county product, meaning that the current MPUD entitlements, the 86,000 commercial use, always have a greater number than the 320 units of multifamily. The comparison illustrates how the county can maintain its economic development interest along the State Road 56 corridor by keeping the potential for retail office entitlements on the property and ensuring a land use entitlement that will contribute more in revenue than it will consume in services. Policy ED 144 mandates that the county must recognize the high priority of retaining employment generating land uses in appropriate and compatible locations within the county. And the State Road 56 corridor specifically is an appropriate and compatible location within the county to retain a high priority for employment generating land uses. ED 144 works together with FLU 187 to preserve the site's existing entitlements. Now, with regard to policy FLU 1810, it talks about the preservation of employment generating land uses in terms of this development. And multifamily does not generate employment opportunities as a land use. And like in the case of ED 144, ED 162 works with policy FLU 1810 to preserve capacity for employment generating land uses as a priority. Finally, with regard to these, at least on this slide, there's also a public reliance factor from section FLU A-2 to consider, in which residents do not reasonably foresee or accommodate impacts previously uncontemplated for additional standalone multifamily residential densities could have on local parks, trails, and other infrastructure. As a result, it is not consistent with the following Land Development Code sections, 402(1)(e)(19), because the preservation of land for employment is a legitimate public purpose and maintaining the existing uses furthers that public purpose. 402(2)(f)(1) through F3 and 402(1)(e)(13) and E17. This project is not consistent with those sections for the following bullets here on the overhead. Higher operational costs to the county, potential strain on utilities capacities, additional demands on larger district regional park systems, which are not sufficiently mitigated by impact fees, an addition of 76 students in the school system, existing commercial office uses do not do these things. as a land use. And 402E11 and E16, it's inconsistent with those sections because the site has constraints that make it unsuitable for standalone multifamily development. And for these reasons, the Planning and Development Department recommends to deny the substantial modification to the Seven Oaks MPUD Master Planning Development Master Plan. That will conclude my presentation. If we have need for, to look at the particular future land use policies and their language, I have some slides available that we can bring those up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Terry. Anybody have any questions? Okay, so your staff is recommended not denial on this one, is that correct?
That's right.
Based on this, okay. No questions?
But I'd like to hear what the applicant says first, then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, gentlemen, if I may, Joel Two and Associates. I represent Stock Development Company. Mr. Keith Gelder, their representative, is available via WebEx, along with Height Design as the planners, Links and Associate as the transportation engineers, Leslie Deutsch, our market expert, who is available via WebEx, and Ed Kester, who is Stock Development's outside legal counsel, also available via WebEx. If I may, I would like to ask you to receive for filing the hardbound copies of the index binder we transmitted via electronic files on Friday to you. This is exactly what you received on the same day as you received the staff's agenda package. If you'd be kind enough to allow me to give one to the clerk and the court
Yes,
reporter.
please. A motion to receive and file?
Second.
A motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Our request, as Mr. Pito said, is very simple. It is simply to designate parcel S19 for multifamily residential use pursuant to the pre-existing DRI, which has existed for 35 years and which predated your comprehensive plan. This DRI is actually older than the comp plan. And pursuant to the land use equivalency matrix, which we refer to as the LUM, the acronym, LUEM, which also was approved in the DRI and the MPUD. I'm going to turn this over to Christy Barrero, the Director of Planning for Height Design. And all of our expert CVs are in the binder, which has been introduced in terms of their expert qualifications. I do politely remind everyone that this is a Snyder quasi-judicial hearing, and therefore you essentially have donned your black robes, sitting as a judge today, to hear this impartially and without any preconceived notions, and we urge you to try to do that and to rely only on the competent substantial evidence which you're about to hear. And I only say this because I have a staff recommendation of denial, and obviously our job is to get this approved. So Christy will now take over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as Christy comes up, and I'm really sorry, I'm having a very difficult time uploading the PowerPoint, so if I can maybe get a minute or so.
Sure. Christy, have you been sworn? You've been sworn. Okay.
And I'm sorry, Joel, too, again, Mr. Chairman. I also was sworn. I
Yeah.
forgot to acknowledge that.
I saw you stand
So
up.
can we stop the timer in the interim?
Yes.
Is somebody stopping the timer? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Christy Barrero, Certified Planner with Height Design, 5904 Hampton Oaks Parkway, Tampa, Florida, 33610. All right, so I wanted to begin this afternoon with an overview of the Seven Oaks project. Terry mentioned that it was originally the Saddlebrooks DRI and MPUD that was approved in 1986. There's approximately 2,500 acres with a mix of uses. Each of the parcels were assigned a primary use and an alternative use. And it should be noted that multifamily was not specifically prohibited from any of these parcels. Over time, the land use equivalency matrix has been used to convert uses based on market demand and developer desires. I also wanted to remind the commission that the development is located in the urban service area as well as the South Market area. So our parcel is approximately 10.6 acres. Stock Development is seeking to convert the existing commercial square footage that's remaining on the property to 320 multifamily apartment units. The western boundary is bordered by Ancient Oaks Boulevard, a 4-lane divided community entrance road. West of the road is a large retention pond. Directly north and northwest of the property are series of office developments. There's approximately 70 of those office suites in those two locations. South of the subject property are additional outparcels, and east of the property is the Sam's Club and their parking lot. So as you can see, this is the only vacant piece of property in this area. On the south side of the outparcels is State Road 56, and there's also a bus stop just on the south or on the north side of State Road 56, adjacent to the property. So looking at this aerial, you can see that the residential component of this quadrant is missing. The quadrant of Ancient Oaks Boulevard on the west, Summergate on the north, Bruce B. Downs on the east, and 56 on the south. So in that square, you have retail, you have office, but you have no residential for a mixed-use project. Interestingly, the office complex just north of this property that's highlighted in yellow, parcel S18, did have an alternate use of multifamily. As you can see from the previous slide, they did develop out as office, but multifamily was an option for that property. You can also see in the tan colors that there are 2 other multifamily developments within Seven Oaks that have been constructed in the vicinity of this project. And this is an aerial showing those parcels. They're outlined in greenish blue. The Windsor Club to the northeast and Colonial Grand to the west. There's also a 3rd apartment complex that's on the south side of State Road 56 that's not part of Seven Oaks. So again, this is a map of the Seven Oaks MPUD. The orangish tan color is where multifamily is a primary use. You can see again the 2 parcels on the south side of the MPUD that are close to our project, as well as some parcels on the north side. The yellow areas are where multifamily is an alternate use. So in the MPUD, a total of 1,726 multifamily units are approved. To date, only 558 units have been constructed, and those are the 2 apartment complexes, again, on the south side of the MPUD, close to our project. So I wanted to talk a little bit in detail about our particular site, the western portion of S19. So as you can see, this is showing the 2 buildings that are proposed, as well as parking to the east. The purple lines indicate the existing sidewalks that are on Ancient Oaks Boulevard, as well as State Road 56. And the teal lines represent proposed sidewalks in this project. So where the existing sidewalks end, we're planning to pick up and have them go through our project. And then on the east side, you can see that those sidewalks will connect to an existing pedestrian walkway through the Sam's Club parking lot. And then here's some graphics that show what this could look like. Along the north side, we're proposing perpendicular parking spaces. Through the central drive aisle, we'll be proposing angled parking spaces. And then the southern drive aisle will be parallel parking spaces. And each of these parking spaces will help calm the traffic as it drives from Ancient Oaks Boulevard to the Sam's parking lot to ensure pedestrian safety. And here's some additional pictures at the southern entrance to the site. As you can see here, there is no median break, so this will be a right in, right out into the project. This graphic shows the amenities that the applicant is proposing. So they're proposing a pool in the center of the project, and there's some graphics of what it could look like. They're also proposing a dog park in the northeast corner, as well as an open space for gathering in the southern area. So we believe that this proposed multifamily development is compatible with the State Road 5654 corridor design standards in compliance with the comprehensive plan. And the plan states that this is to create attractive roadway corridor along this road that enhances property values and the quality of life. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Keith Geldner, who's the president of Stock Development, to talk about his company and show some images of other projects that they've done in Florida. And Keith is joining on WebEx, but I'll be flipping through the slides as he speaks.
All right, thank you. Keith? Keith, are you there?
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and I assume you have not been sworn. Can you give your name and address, and we'll swear you in?
Yes, sir. Keith Gelder, Stock Development. The address is 2639 Professional Circle, Suite 101, Naples, Florida 34119.
All right, if you do raise your right hand, we'll swear you in.
I do.
Okay, thank you. Let's continue.
Well, thank you. Yes, good afternoon. Again, my name is Keith Gelder with Stock Development. We're the applicant and developer of the project. Appreciate the opportunity to participate virtually. It's really not important right now. To give you a little information about our company, we've been in business since 2001, over 6,000 units, different housing types, including single-family, multifamily, townhomes, and condos throughout the state of Florida. As a developer of master plan communities in the last 20 years, we the complexity of master plan communities to achieve a cohesive plan of while master plan communities are a large component of our portfolio.
The last 6 years, we've focused on expanding our portfolio into commercial, mixed-use, hospitality, and luxury apartment communities. In 2015, we launched Stock Luxury Apartment Living as an extension of our home building business with the initiative to create high-quality apartment communities with high-level finishes and amenity packages like you can see here. Our typical project was well landscaped and filled with an array of on-site amenities like dog parks, group fitness, resort-style pools, cabanas, skating rooms, fire pits, and outdoor living areas. Our target demographic is typically working professionals, aged 25 to 35, and then empty nesters, 50 and older. We've actually seen an uptick in empty nesters within our projects, which is a trend that's occurring across the country. At one of our recent projects, actually 40% of our residents were age 50 and older, and I think that speaks to the quality and underscores the fact that the quality of our projects regularly attract renters by choice, defined as those who can afford to purchase homes but prefer a maintenance-free lifestyle. We found that many of our residents come from our homeowners at our master plan communities who wish to age in place and prefer a maintenance-free lifestyle. And I expect the similar situation to occur here at Seven Oaks. So with respect to the property at Seven Oaks, our vision for the project is to create a high-quality, multi-generational community that's complementary to Seven Oaks. Although Seven Oaks has a broad range of housing types that exist already within the community, we're seeking to provide an additional option that appeals to renters by choice and also those who wish to downsize and continue living within Seven Oaks and be near their friends and family. So, as Christy mentioned, the site is ideally situated on the southern perimeter of the community on 56, bordered by only office and retail, no residential. Closest residential units are over 800 feet away, minimizing any impact on adjacent neighbors. The site has excellent walkability to retail to create that mixed-use project that's desirable from a residence perspective and also encouraged from a planning perspective. A short list of uses that are walkable from the property includes Sam's Club that offers grocery, pharmacy, and gas. You have a bank, nail salon, eye care, home goods store, and a variety of quick serve and sit-down restaurant options. Adding apartments in this location will help those commercial tenants remain viable and provide goods and services that are convenient and accessible to our residents. So with that, I want to show a quick 3D video we prepared to help articulate our vision for the property. Rick, if you could please cue it up.
Yeah, so Keith, we're going to skip the video for now. If you guys want to see it later, we just want to be cognizant of our 20 minutes that we have today.
Okay.
So next I'm going to bring up Steve Henry to talk about traffic.
Steve Henry, Dixon Associates, 5023 West Laurel, Tampa 33607, and I have been sworn. We've been involved with Seven Oaks for over 20 years now. In fact, we did the traffic study for phase 2 of the project, which is basically Seven Oaks. And in that analysis,
Slide for the video, please.
Sorry, Keith, we're going to skip the video for now. We're running a little bit short on time.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, we're able to share that. It is in your event materials. I think what you'll see is the project is a high-quality development that the community can be proud of. This property has remained vacant for over 15 years since the original Sam's Club was constructed and actively listed for more than 5 years prior to our acquisition. So we believe this site isn't a viable big box retail location. The highest and best use for this project is multifamily to really create that mixed use project that everyone's seeking to achieve. So with that, that's in my presentation. I'd like to turn it over to Steve Henry to discuss traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, so I'll continue. So this parcel in the original traffic analysis was part of the 400,000 square feet of retail. This parcel has allocated about 19,522 square feet of retail to it. And what the graphic up here shows is a comparison of what the traffic generated by the 119,000 square feet of retail versus what the developer is proposing, which is 320 multifamily. And as you can see, the green is the retail, which would be 424 PM peak hour trips, and the multifamily would be 135. So there's a significant decrease in the trip generation over the what is approved there, which is the retail versus the multifamily. In addition, we have done an extensive number of land use equivalency matrix trade-offs throughout Seven Oaks over the last 20 years. So that concludes my presentation, unless you've got any questions on traffic.
Any questions?
At the end, I have a few questions.
You have?
At the end of the presentation.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, our next presenter is Leslie Deutsch, our market analyst via WebEx, please, if you can activate her.
All right, thank you. Leslie, are you there?
I'm here. Hello, nice to see you.
All right, go right ahead. Can you give me your name and address, and then we'll swear you in?
Leslie Deutsch, 1900 Northwest Corporate Boulevard, Boca Raton, Florida, 33431.
Okay, if you raise your right hand, we'll swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God?
I hesitated there. I don't know what that means.
Oh, I didn't, there was a delay, I apologize. Okay. So my name is Leslie Doyle. I work for a group called John Burns Real Estate Consulting, and we spend all of our time looking at housing markets across the country, and I'm based in Florida and work all across the state of Florida. I was asked to put together a brief report to look at if there's more need for rental units in Pasco County. So the first thing that we did, we looked at 4 different aspects of Pasco County. We looked at first the location, obviously, as all of you do know, it's a great location for apartments, especially for those looking for a suburban setting, and Keith alluded to this before. It has great access to highways, and really it's become a huge growth corridor with its great schools, with increased retail and entertainment, and it's got about 561,000 residents that continues to grow. So it is considered one of the biggest paths of growth for the MSA, for the Tampa MSA. You can see that map here. On the next slide, we really dug into the demographics of Pasco County. And Pasco is an interesting demographic because it's got that mix of retirees and younger residents. And more we're seeing, as Keith said before, we do national research on how many more people age 55 plus are starting to rent rather than own. They want to live near their kids, they want to have the access to move around, they want less maintenance. So it's become a choice for a lot of empty nesters and retirees. But also for younger residents, obviously, pre-family and post-family, they're going to need a wide range of housing options. And we need to accommodate that with more rentals. The average household size you can see here in Pasco County is a little bit larger, but the median age is a little bit older. So you can see that kind of complement of young and old already in Pasco. And then we dug a little bit deeper on the next slide. You can see where the apartment market is today. And I want to spend a minute on this. This is Class A apartments. And Class A is really any kind of new construction in the last 10 years and probably even some 15 years. It has a tiny little drop off, but I will argue, and I've been doing this real estate research for over 25 years, anything above 95% occupied is basically full. So we spend our time going into the leasing agents and speaking and seeing what's happening in the market. I am hearing stories of people coming and there's 2 available units in a tight place. They'll go and pay 12 months up front. And what that's doing is really pricing out the workers in the local market. They're pricing out a lot of people that can't put 12 months up front. There's waiting lists, and really every Class A building is completely full. So that's one indication that I think is really important to show that we really do need additional units. And then the final slide, I think, is the most important. That we conduct a demand model. And so what we do is we take, and there's a lot of detail behind this. I think you were provided a full report, and I'm happy to provide that. But we take the total number of renter households today in Pasco County. That's about 58,000 people. Then we have a demographer that sits on our company, and he forecasts, given the growth pattern, forward what that's going to look like in 2026. That's 66,000 people. So that's about, you're going to have basically an annual rate of about 1,700 new residents per year over the next 5 years of renter units, okay, people that are renting. And then, because not everyone can afford this new Class A construction, we actually take all of the residents moving in and divide it out by income and by age. So what you see below there is what we call market rate. So those that are making, assuming the household income gets to $50,000 plus, is that we kind of limit the renter pool to only those that make $50,000 plus, because that's really a Class A apartment. And that number, it does come down, but it comes down to 21,000 in 2021, and it's expected to grow to 28,000. So what we concluded here is that Pasco County, just Pasco County, will need another 6,500 units just to accommodate the growth of the population. And this doesn't include some people that might be living in Pasco in a house and want to move to a rental or things like that. So it's probably underestimating it. And I know that there is some supply in the pipeline, but there's not enough right now to really accommodate that large number. It's a good thing, and it's something that I think needs to be accomplished.
Did we
Yeah.
stop the time?
Yeah.
We stopped the time, so I can ask a question. Leslie, is she still there? Did you, when you were looking at your analysis, did you look at the amount of multifamily entitlements that already exists in this area? In Pasco County or in this area?
I did not look at the entitlements that exist in the area. I looked at the future supply overall. It's a little bit tricky to do that because it really depends on where the location is. So no, that was not part of the analysis to look at the location of the new entitlement.
Okay, and then my other question is, were you tasked with reviewing the REMI economic analysis that was supplied by the Office of Economic Growth? Were you asked to look at that?
We
at all?
we only got that Friday.
Okay, I just want to know if she was asked to look at it.
No, I can tell you she was not engaged for that because we didn't
Okay,
have time.
that answers my question. Thank you.
But I would like to respond. I know, Mr. Chairman, I think that with the switchovers and the swearing and all, our time just expired. Would you possibly give me just maybe 3 minutes max to, because I need to rebut the economic analysis which staff only provided to us on Friday. So we haven't seen that, and also Mr. Pitos's comp plan arguments. And I'll be very brief. Just in closing, I think from the planning experts, I submit that this site actually is the poster child for an urban, mixed-use, pedestrian-friendly infill project. It is in the South Market area, also known as the urban concentration area, and a transit corridor. Ironically, when I bring new clients in to meet with staff, this is exactly the kind of project they ask my clients to build. They say, please go build us a project that has high-density multifamily surrounded by retail out parcels and professional office, all in a walkable environment. Ironically, when we find a hole in the donut that has every piece except apartments, then all of a sudden it's not acceptable. But to that point, at the pre-app, staff told us that there was no problem with this application. I put those pre-app notes in that binder. I submitted the staff's pre-app notes and my notes, and they match up. We were told specifically that the DRI and MPUD already authorized the loom conversion from retail to multifamily. We were told that multifamily was, and I quote, appropriately placed, close quote, at this infill location, and that was Mr. Pitos's own long-range planning staff that said that. And finally, that there was nothing in the MPUD that prohibited designating multifamily use on this parcel because, as Mr. Henry just testified, it's been done multiple times throughout Seven Oaks. This map shows you how many parcels have been either designated primarily, alternately for multifamily, and how many times things have been swapped around. That loom has been used 15 or 20 times. That's why staff told us initially, no problem, we've done this all the time, this is a great spot for this. It's only now, due to a political directive, that staff at the last minute was told to oppose this application, and that's unfortunate. The sole basis they argue now is this economic impact argument, and I want to address that. I have no idea what that REMI model is that they just put in the memo on Friday. No one provided the methodology. No one gave us access to the model. No one gave us a heads up and an opportunity to have Ms. Deutsch or someone who's competent to analyze whatever it is the county did. However, we did some simple developer and lawyer math, and I think here is the response. These are actual multifamily projects built and assessed by the property appraiser in Pasco County with their tax bill. These are ones that exist. Based upon this and extrapolating to our 320 units, there is no question but that our tax bill annually is going to be $850,000. I don't know where they came up with their numbers, but $850,000 based on these other projects. Well, over 30 years, that is $25 million. And over 60 years, the life of a project, it's $50 million. In addition, we will pay $3 million in impact and mobility fees, including Mr. Williams' school impact fees and the county's fees and utility fees. So we're going to generate $850,000 a year in recurring taxes, and we're going to generate $3 million upfront in impact fees. And finally, there is almost $500,000 of CDD debt, Seven Oaks CDD debt, levied on these parcels. They are part of that CDD. This developer will be writing a check to pay off that debt because you don't carry that on apartments. There's no one to pass it through to. And so there'll be a payment to the community CDD of $500,000. So it is disingenuous to say that the project won't bring benefits. Lastly, on the policies, because this is important. I made a list here, but you saw a section in the binder, and this is important on the economic impact arguments. What their study assumes is for there to be any of those impacts from retail development, the assumption is that you will have a brick and mortar retail use, buy that site, build on that site, and operate on that site. Otherwise, their projection is zero. This site has sat here for 15 years with no one there. And it's owned by Walmart and DeBartolo. And if anyone knows how to market and sell retail property, it's Walmart and DeBartolo. And they've had it marketed for 5 years. It isn't frontage because the retail out parcels up front took up the frontage. So as Keith said, this is the highest and best use. The policy Mr. Pito cited, the future land use policy 1.8.10, here's precisely what it says. It says the county shall ensure that adequate land is available for high-paying employment-generating land uses. Now, how is a 10-acre site with no road frontage that's at the corner of Bruce B. Downs and State Road 56, how is dropping that out of the industrial, corporate office park, target industry inventory, how is that going to move the needle? And when we have Pasco Town Center, CPEV, Newport Corners, you name it, all the large industrial projects. That policy is aimed at those projects, not a 10-acre site that just, a couple months ago, Mr. Cronin stood here and argued on CPEV that those 4-acre sites in Connecticut City were worthless, that he needed 50 and 100-acre sites to be meaningful for the employment-generating uses. So if Mr. Cronin was right 2 months ago on CPEV, this 10-acre site is of no value to him for that purpose. Next, it said, and I noted, high-paying employment jobs. What you will get here, if anything, is another Circle K, dollar store, or mattress firm on these parcels. They're going to be minimum wage retail jobs. And finally, the important point here on the public reliance. This MPUD and DRI approved 35 years ago has, no controversy, has 1,726 multifamily units approved. The Seven Oaks community has always known that they had 1,700 approved multifamily units. So how are we wrecking public reliance when they only have 500 and some odd built? We're adding 320. Even if ours are approved and built, it still will be at less than 50%, 50% of the 1,700 that have always been approved. So we urge you to please look beyond the politics. I know the apartment issue is a hot button issue. I know this location is a hot button issue, but we implore you to be the judge that you're sitting at today. Apply the comp plan, apply the policies, apply common sense, and please recognize that in a normal world, that if this project came in, it would be on consent. You wouldn't think about it twice. You'd be thanking this developer for building exactly the mixed-use project that this county has begged all developers to build. Thank you. And thank you for the extra time. I apologize.
Any questions before we take a seat?
Do you have anyone who is against the project that want to talk?
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. Okay, so how many people are planning to speak on this project? Okay. All right, who would like to be first? If you come up and state your name and address, please.
Good afternoon, John Thompson, 26738 Wingdale Drive, Wesley Chapel, Florida, 33544. Before I begin, I just want to thank everyone for allowing me this chance to speak to you and to specifically call out Mr. Williams. I corresponded with him previously because a lot of residents were concerned about education and the impact of bringing more students or more families in, how it would impact the school. Right now, fortunately, we're in a great state, so thank you for all the work that's gone on to make that happen. Also want to call out special thanks to Tanya Snyder. She helps regular citizens like me that don't understand things like LDCs, FLUs, MPUDs, LUMs, all these things to help us understand what the issues are. And without their patience and time, it would make it hard for us to have these type of conversations and understand the matters of fact. So, poster child. Whenever I came up here, I had a whole different list of what I was going to say, but then I just heard everything that was presented. Poster child is a square peg for a round hole. That's what this request is. A lot of people believe that there are statements against apartments. That's not what the case is here. This is just the rezoning, the effort to change commercial entitlements into multifamily units. As was noted, there's already multifamily units to the north. It's called out here. They're available. They're ready right now. Just need developers to be able to build to them. Sorry. Whenever you look at the commercial entitlements, the retail and office space, we see where places are constantly needed. There's people that want to start small businesses that need that office and retail space so that they can venture and have their dreams. A lot of the residents in Seven Oaks, they probably want to start businesses as well. Unfortunately, with prices going up and the availability being so low, it makes it difficult sometimes. Several weeks ago, whenever this meeting was paused or delayed until an indefinite time, there was information related to the financials that was published online. So just like I was able to get it, anyone else could have gotten it as well. It talked about the $3 million loss whenever you convert from commercial to multifamily units, the impact to the county. Additionally, it's been on the stock website for several weeks, what this would look like. It's kind of like an advertisement to all of the potential renters out there. And that looks great. They were able to show really good work. It's just in the wrong place. It needs to be in the place that's designated on the MPUD. Most of the residents that moved to this area moved here because of the MPUD, not understanding that an LUEM allows for it based off of trip count. That's great, but I'll go back to the adage of, just because you're allowed to do something doesn't mean that you should. So I would request that all of you oppose the rezoning and not entertain any of the alternatives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Could be next, please. Come on up. If you plan to, I think there's one more back there. If you plan to speak, why don't you come forward so we can move along.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kathy Sierra. I live at 26908 Winged Elm Drive, Wesley Chapel, right in Seven Oaks. I moved here pre-COVID in October 2019, coming from New York where all the businesses are being boarded up. It was very refreshing to move to an area where you see nothing but construction and an area thriving. I also have been blessed to relocate my parents, who moved here 1 year ago after me in October 2020. They also purchased a home in Seven Oaks, and they live a mile from my house. I want to share a story with you that my family has experienced. And let me start this story out with being very blunt. There is not enough offices to support our community presently. My father, who is 80, needs constant medical care. After weeks of research, I was able to find him a primary physician who ultimately would be the anchor of his care. He recently retired, and we were told we need to find a new primary physician. I researched and researched for a new physician, And call after call, we were told, how about an appointment 3 months from now? How about 4 months from now? And I even had a receptionist tell me at a doctor's office, I'm so sorry. There's just not enough medical support in this area because too many people are relocating here. Looking through the social media and talking with my friends and neighbors, it's the same story over and over. Waiting 3+ months for a primary physician specialist or a dental appointment is absolutely ridiculous. We do not have the commercial office property necessary to support our doctors' practices or the residents that need their support. So when I hear about the possible rezoning in my own community, it saddens me. So here's the big question that I ask you to deeply consider today. Why would parcel S19 be rezoned from commercial/offices to multi-units when Seven Oaks already has vacant land zoned for multi-units? Wouldn't commercial or retail be better suited for S19 to support our current residents? And I just want to rebut, I'm just adding this on to my speech, what the real estate woman who came on and gave that whole big long speech about how they're expecting 6,000, that they're going to need 6,000 more apartments, you know, within the next couple of years to accommodate everybody relocating. Well, what about all the supportive needs that we need for all those people? Doctors, firefighters, police officers, and all other types of utilities. There's vacant land already available in Seven Oaks on the northern end. Why relocate? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Chelsea Waller-Dother. I'm an attorney on behalf of the Seven Oaks CDD. I would request an additional 3 minutes, being that the applicant was afforded 23 minutes of your time.
No, you didn't request any time in advance, and he did, so I made an exception.
He didn't
So
make
I'm giving you
timely
your 3
amendment for the
minutes.
extra 3 minutes.
Your time is running, so you better get started.
All right, Chelsea Waller-Dother, 38038 Meridian Avenue, Dade City, Florida, with Waller Law. We agree with all the arguments made by the planning committee, or the staff, in their agenda memorandum that was published. As we all know, MPUDs don't just come about overnight. Much thought and deliberation went into creating this plan. And the developer strategically placed all of the commercial and office buildings on the outer edge of the MPUD, with residential located on the interior. This thoughtful design provides a gradual transition between the different land uses and helps minimize visual and noise impacts on different land uses. This also helps establish the separate and distinct identities of the community, with a clear separation between office and commercial and residential. The applicant is proposing to deviate from this established pattern by placing an apartment complex directly in the middle of commercial property, making it inconsistent and non-compatible with the surrounding uses by creating this hodgepodge sort of character with this apartment complex being dropped in the center. Additionally, thought went into traffic patterns, neighborhood park space, and CDD fees to support Seven Oaks. And there was public reliance on this plan. So this proposed rezoning will affect the residents of Seven Oaks who are governed by and pay CDD fees. And they relied on those when they purchased their homes in Seven Oaks. And this change will directly impact those residents and potentially the CDD fee structure. They make note of traffic. The only access point into this proposed apartment complex is through Ancient Oaks Boulevard off of 56. The applicant is not proposing any changes to that access point, and if you look at the aerial maps that were provided, there's no lights, there's no nothing, there's just, it's going to be chaos in the peak hours of the morning and the afternoon. The applicant put some weight on walkability. This isn't Hyde Park Village. No one's walking to Home Goods 17 miles across the interstate. That's just not going to happen. There's not much there for people to walk to. The proposed apartment complex doesn't comply with the neighborhood park requirement. That section requires for 320 units, they would have to have a 3.2 acre neighborhood park. And they're asking for a variance to 1 acre. Their proposed site plan shows several parks, which is allowed as long as those are a minimum of 1/2 acre. None of those are. They're all less than 1/2 acre, 0.11, 0.16, 0.44. It doesn't comply with section 905. There are multiple apartment complexes in the area. As we've seen on the aerial, there are 2 directly next to them. There's one directly across the street from S19, and then there's also, if they want to build one tomorrow, they can go just north of Seven Oaks.
That's your time. If you just go ahead and wrap up, please.
Do you have any other written comments you want to submit?
I don't necessarily, but like right now.
Well, since you're out of time, did you want to submit any written documents for the record?
I think I've pretty much got it wrapped up. I think that's it.
One advice would be when this goes to the Board of County Commissioners, if you need more than 3 minutes, you need to request that time with the chairman in advance.
Yes, and the applicant, they asked for additional 3 minutes at the end of theirs, so I thought I would get that same courtesy.
But he had also requested time in advance.
Right.
Additional time in advance. So I'm just giving you
Thank
a word
you.
of advice for
I
when you
appreciate
get
it.
to the board.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the speaker?
I have some comments and questions as well. I have been living in Seven Oaks for over 14 years.
Wait. Procedurally, we need to make sure the applicant gets rebuttal, and I don't know if staff still wants to say anything else too.
Yeah.
So, Joel, do you want to save your rebuttal till after Mr. Pitos, or do you want to go first?
I'll go first.
Actually, we do have folks online
Oh, okay. All right.
that
So
would
let's-
like to speak. So.
Okay.
So we should have Marina Garbut. Are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Please provide your name and address for the record, and please state whether you've been sworn.
Marina Garbett, 27433 Water Ash Drive, Wesley Chapel, and I have not been sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I oppose the rezoning of parcel S19 for the following reasons. The development will increase traffic through the 707 subdivision, and as a resident getting out of our neighborhood currently is time consuming during peak times due to the amount of traffic coming in from State Road 56 and Bruce Downs. There are currently road signs in Seven Oaks prohibiting through traffic. However, I'm not aware of any enforcement of these signs. The residents of the development on parcel S19 to travel east on State Route 56 and north or south on Bruce Downs will choose to drive through the 7 Oaks subdivision using Ancient Oaks Boulevard or Summergate Boulevard, thereby avoiding making left turns or U-turns at the intersections of Bruce Downs and State Road 56 and also Ancient Oaks Boulevard and State Road 56. And therefore I think adding that kind of development there would not be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we also have Mr. Michael Garbut on the line. Mr. Garbut, would you please state your name and address for the record and whether you've been sworn?
Michael Garbut, address 27433 Water Ash Drive, Wesley Chapel, and I have not been sworn.
Raise your right hand, and do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Yes, we bought our home in Seven Oaks with the S19 lots zoned for retail and office. And at some point in the future, more stores, restaurants, and offices would improve the livability of Seven Oaks, making it more convenient to eat out, shop, and find services like doctors, hairdressers, and so on. The way it's zoned today created the expectations that Seven Oaks will become an even better place to live in the future. Changing the zoning to multifamily use would add traffic, and it would reduce the property values, and it would destroy our reasonable expectations that the area will improve over time as more amenities become available. And I think because of that, doing the change when there is other appropriately zoned that Seven Oaks area. I don't think it's to the benefit of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on WebEx?
That's all we have on WebEx.
Okay, Joel?
Before Joel speaks, just quickly, just for the audience, the chair needs to leave in approximately 5 minutes. And we don't have a vice chair today, so under our rules of procedure, the chair has designated Mr. Hansel to act as the acting chair for this meeting, for the remainder of the meeting once he leaves. I just didn't want anybody to be shocked when the chair gets up to leave. And Mr. Hansel moves.
Not because I'm not interested.
I hope I didn't hurt your feelings.
I didn't want to say it.
But we will still have a quorum even once he leaves.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll be very brief, and I'm responding only in rebuttal to points that have been raised since I sat down. First, a question about our MPUD rights and the argument that we don't have MPUD rights to do this. There have been at least 15 to 20 loom conversions over the course of this MPUD, including several that involve multifamily conversions. There have been conversions from multifamily out, and there have been conversions from other items into multifamily. So it's been done repeatedly, both directions, never been questioned. In fact, as to allowable uses, multifamily has been added as an allowable use to other parcels where it wasn't originally designated as allowable use. So this is not the first time that would have been done. And of course, other uses have been added that were never contemplated. As staff told you, the last change added a brewery use. So breweries are okay according to staff in Seven Oaks, but apartments aren't, even though we need apartment dwellers to help drink the beer to support the brewery. So the other point was that why should we be allowed to do apartments here when there are other multifamily sites within Seven Oaks? The problem is those sites are not for sale. They have not been for sale, or they were originally authorized for this use, but they've been converted to other uses. For example, on the north end, those brown multifamily sites that were originally primary multifamily, they've been converted to retail. They actually went the other way. That's car dealerships and retail on the 75 frontage. So the map was just to show you where things originally had been authorized, just to demonstrate that multifamily is not a new introduction, and it's been done many times. Importantly from that map, and why our location makes sense, all of those designations from the beginning and all of the new ones for multifamily have been, and for all non-single family uses have always been around the perimeter. They're either at the north perimeter or the south perimeter. So the integrity of that internal single family neighborhood has largely been preserved. We're doing nothing to challenge that. We're doing nothing to intervene in that. So this proposed use is on the perimeter exactly where such use was always intended. The attorney said that there would be some adverse CDD impact. I didn't catch exactly that argument, but let me reiterate the facts. Our parcels are in the CDD. They have the CDD assessment lien. They have to pay their operating and maintenance assessment share every year, just like all the other parcels. So this parcel, regardless of the use it's put to, has to pay its O&M share. It's on the tax bill. It has no choice. And it's still obligated to pay its allocated share of the CDD debt, which I indicated would actually be paid off lump sum in this case. Neighborhood park waiver. The neighborhood park waiver that was requested is 100% consistent with every multifamily apartment project I've done in this county the last 3 years, where those waivers have routinely been granted. They give them credit for the amenitized areas that they provide and the dog park. And in this case, this is back when staff was supporting our application. Remember, we went 1.5 years with staff support. So we vetted all these issues. We met with Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec, in their review comments, approved our waiver. They were specific as to what counted, what did not, and what we would have to do. And in their written review comments in the record, they agreed that what we were doing was 100% consistent with all of the neighborhood park requirements for all of the other apartment projects they've approved in the last 3 or 4 years. So that was signed off on. This is before staff changed its mind and decided it didn't want apartments. 2 more points. Traffic, obviously the only person who's testified, who's qualified to opine on traffic is Mr. Henry, the traffic engineer, and he testified that in fact the apartments, 320 apartments, will produce substantially fewer PM peak hour trips, which is how the traffic engineers measure it, than the retail. And in fact, if you look at his bar chart, they will, and do the math, we will produce only 31% of the trips that the existing approved retail would produce if it was built. Finally, arguments that what we really should be doing is more office, and particularly medical office. Well, as you're probably aware, within 7 Oaks, there is a new hospital under construction with a large medical arts building under construction. So that need is under construction in 7 Oaks. It is being met. What isn't being met is this residential infill donut hole on State Road 56 in the urban core. That's all we have. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I think you should let staff, if staff has any final words, Mr. Petros, let him do that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are a number of points that I'd like to underline here. As it relates to zoning actions and new zoning actions, which this would be one, they must comply with today's comprehensive plan. So even though the DRI of this development may predate the comprehensive plan, it nevertheless has to meet the policies of the current comprehensive plan per state statute. And the fact that this project predates the comprehensive plan does not mean that the comprehensive plan doesn't apply. Likewise, it doesn't preclude the application of the land use equivalency matrix, I should say, does not preclude the application of the current comprehensive plan. And so we have to consider that trip generation and traffic impacts are one piece of the puzzle. The LUMAT illustrates the impacts to roads, but it does not limit the economic development considerations that I've previously noted. As far as the pre-app notes were mentioned, the pre-app is a pre-application meeting, and the title says everything. It's before an application is actually submitted into the department for review. So the pre-app is not a full review to assess the entire impact of the project. It provides good forward intelligence on a number of projects, let's say a majority of them. But sometimes a larger review identifies other issues that come up, and these have to be vetted out. Additionally, I'll note that as it relates to the policy flu 1810 and the discussion for adequate land for employment generating uses and the 10-acre argument that was presented, I think that's a discussion that really needs to be taken into consideration with what occurred at parcel S18. It's tied to the story of parcel S18 because parcel S18 is part of the overall quadrant that is at the northwest corner of Bruce B. Downs and Sierra 56. The story of parcel S18, which I'll walk over and point to the yellow spot on the map here at my left.
The office complex?
Story of parcel S18, I think, included the multifamily option at that location, but the multifamily option was not elected there, or selected rather. The parcel S18 went office, and I think this is where multifamily would have been most appropriate as a transition between the residential uses to the north and non-residential uses further south on parcel S18, since it would have been, by my estimations, somewhat 1,000 feet or so from the State Road 56 frontage. And that would be the land that would be preserving for the employment generating land uses in total. Parcel S18 is 50 plus acres, if I recall. And so one might say that, far from being a precedent to allow multifamily on parcel S19, it was the southern limit of where we would allow it here at this developable corner with Bruce B. Downs. And then as it relates to density, You know, the comprehensive plan does not mandate higher density in any particular location in the South Market area. It's true that the comprehensive plan desires and seeks higher densities in the South Market area, in the urban concentration area, but it doesn't identify particular locations. It doesn't say that this particular area, beyond what the rest flues already indicate on the future land use map, it doesn't particularly indicate that this particular area needs to have X amount of density. And so that's important to note, because when identifying those higher densities, we must consider and fit those densities within the context of future land use policies and economic development policies that I previously talked about, which was FLU 187 and 1810, as well as ED 144 and ED 162. Finally, I do want to note that, you know, as it relates to the memo from the Office of Economic Growth, it was posted with the agenda on Friday for the Planning Commission meeting today. However, I understand that the applicants only received it on Friday, but we also only received 4+ gigabytes of data from them on Friday as well. So, trade of information that occurred on Friday. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions? Okay.
And Denise, we're done with WebEx, right? Everybody's spoken that's registered?
We are done with WebEx, yes, thank you.
Okay, bring it back to the board.
I think we're to the planning commission now.
Or planning commission, okay. Wait, Rebecca, you wanted to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have living in Seven Oaks for over 14 years. I live in Grass Glen community across the street of the elementary school inside of Seven Oaks. I have a couple of questions for the staff first. I'm really familiar with the area. As I mentioned to you, I wake up every day there, and I go to have a dinner in my house every day, so I know how it is. I have some comments that I hear from the applicant that bring my attention. I don't believe that the issues that we have in the medical access to doctors, dentists, is under construction. I really don't believe. I'm really familiar with that hospital. They are building their daycare, and we need services. And I'm totally in favor to walkable communities. I'm totally in favor to mixed-use community, but I really believe the location of this specific property is not the ideal. And other things that I hear from the applicant, that is the need of residential there. Honestly, if you see the aerial pictures, you see clearly that we have a multifamily at the behind SAS Club at the northeast area. I don't know how many units there, but it's a decent sized complex. And the same at the west side, inside of Seven Oaks, we have another apartment complex that is there. I'm really familiar with the Summergate development, that is 38 office building on the north side, and that was built by Kevin Howell, construction developer, and Waterford built the west side, that is Seven Oaks Professional Center. So, saying all this, I have a question for the county at this point that is really important for me to hear. The slide that you present, one of the comments that you mentioned is that the utilities are compromised if we build 320 units, because my interpretation is that we don't have the capacity as the county to provide the decent utility services for that apartment complex. If the county staff, can you please explain to me we have or not the capacity to build those units there? And again, I have been following this specific topic for a long time, and I have been doing my research, and I believe that this is not a walkable area. It's not. It's not something that I want to take my kids to walk around. You know, I prefer to have high-end restaurants, services that you say. I go every day there, I cut my hair there, I go to the dry cleaning. Everything is around that area. And maybe I cannot be, how can I say this as my second language, that is English, but I try to be the most objective judge, as you mentioned here, in favor, what I see is I have a lot of information and experience living there. I locate myself in another location, and I'm sure that my comments are going to fit with what I say right now, if this is what we have around. So, saying this one, I oppose to this multi-family complex there. I would love to see development like that. It's no doubt that the quality of the construction that you offer there is something that we need in Pasco County. You haven't developed those type of units all the way to Naples, to Fort Myers, and Pinellas. But again, it's not the right location. I don't have a doubt that if you build, we build as the quality and the service you expect, but it's not what we need there, in my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Question, I understand that there's been 15 to 20, I guess they're pronounced lumens, L-U-E-M-S. Have any of those requests been denied at any time?
Mr. Chairman, the answer to that would be no. Those land use equivalency matrices exchanges, to my knowledge, have not been.
I'm sorry, Terry.
Yes. Sorry. Should have drinking some water. To my knowledge, the answer to the question is no, the land use equivalency matrices exchanges prior have not been denied.
So, Mr. Pitos, you could answer the question about utilities. I read the memo differently than you're reading it. I read it as that it's going to place additional demands on utilities. It wasn't necessarily saying that we didn't have plant capacity to accommodate it. It just said that, I think what he said in his memo, and Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, was that it would have a greater utility demand than the commercial would, not necessarily that we don't have capacity to handle it. And Terry, tell me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Stated.
I would like to ask Mr. Tu and his team to talk about the access to the existing commercial on the east side of the property and the access from the highway.
Right, I'm going to ask Christy Barrera, our planner, to put her graphic back up and walk you through. That's a good point, and it's one that we specifically worked through with staff while they were still processing and supporting the application, because we worked out those drive aisles, those parking areas, and those sidewalks specifically with staff, and they signed off on them. But Christy can walk you through that quickly with a slide.
Mr. Hansel. Yeah, Chris. I'm sorry, before she does that, I told the chairman I have to leave as well. I have a doctor's appointment, but just prior to my leaving, I have no issues with this particular rezoning. I think it's appropriate, as Mr. Tu has said, that the number of multifamily planned for this development is 1,700. They're far below that, which means we have already planned for the capacity to accommodate those students. So we have no capacity issues from the school board's perspective. Thank you. Anyway, sorry I have to leave. Go ahead.
Commissioner Anderson, to answer your question, Denise has one of the graphics up right now. This is the pedestrian graphic, and we can flip to an aerial too if that's helpful. But there are 3 existing access points to this property. There are 3 drive aisles that go to the Sam's Club parking lot. And we are not proposing any changes to those drive aisles. So they will still be in the same form that they are. So you have the northern drive aisle here that goes along the back of Sam's Club and actually comes up to, I believe this is Summerbrook Drive. And there is a median cut here too. So you can do a right in, a right out, a left in, or a left out. The middle drive aisle, again, is staying in the same location. There's a median cut here as well. This goes along the front of the Sam's Club, and this road actually, again, goes back out to this main road that goes to Bruce B. Downs. And then here we have our southern access point. The southern drive aisle is between the back of all the out parcels and the Sam's Club parking lot. And again, it winds around here to the entrance of Sam's, out to Summerbrook, out to Bruce B. Downs. You can see that there's a median cut here at State Road 56, or an entrance here, and then there's another entrance over here, and then the main entrance at Seven Oaks Boulevard. So
With the properties vacant as they are now, what do you think the greatest entrance into that commercial district is from the west?
from Ancient Oaks Boulevard?
Yeah.
I don't know. Steve Henry might be able to answer that question for you.
Steve Henry, yeah. We actually had done counts out there to look at what the volumes are. And so the majority of them go in and out the middle access, which is the front of the stores, which is what you would expect.
Right.
We've got a right in, right out, which gets, some of the people coming from 56, but the majority of people that are using it are using the full median opening because that goes to the front of the stores.
That's the only thing that really bothers me from just a flow capacity and parking lot on either side with traffic going both directions in a small area.
Well, again, this development will have 70% less traffic than if that were developed as commercial. And we also have looked at those driveways to see what the operation is of those with the multifamily. And they will all operate except the level of service, and there's sufficient turn lanes to accommodate those. So we've already looked at that and evaluated that, and from the standpoint of what's existing plus what we're adding to it, we think it'll operate except the level of service. So it's actually better than if it were commercial because you'd have significantly more traffic at those driveways than what you'll have with the multifamily.
So
we
I just see a difference between the commercial and the residential in terms of the nature of the people that will be using it principally. But thank you for the answers.
Sure. Before you leave that area, can you step back up, please? Show me again how the traffic will flow into this property, because I live in this area, and I don't quite agree with what you're saying, but I will give you the benefit of the doubt. Please, show me again how the traffic will flow in there without going through the parking lot at Sam's Club.
You say that the traffic for this particular project?
For this project in this area.
The access that it has, now it has full access to the access through the Sam's Club. It has the access through, to 56. Now, the predominant amount of traffic will use Ancient Oaks because that's obviously the front door for the multifamily. But if somebody wants to go to, is coming from the north on 581, they can certainly turn on the internal roadway system and get to the site from there. And once you live there, you'll know the shortcuts within Seven Oaks of how to get there. But again, will the people that are visiting, that most of them will use Ancient Oaks. But again, we have a significant decrease in the amount of traffic that will be using those.
Okay. Thank you. Didn't mean to impact your time.
The only other thing I just want to make sure I understand is the original plans were up to 1,700 multifamily units, and you're what now, 500 now?
Yeah.
And adding the 360, yeah, put you over 800? Okay.
Chris?
Yeah,
Chris, you have any questions?
Yeah, well, more statements. I mean, I have a tough time with the outright denial of this project. To be honest, I think it's I see both sides of the argument that there's some good. It's a very positive project potentially for the area. Mr. Tu made the comment that some property's been marketed for 5 years. A legitimate user has not come forward. I've lived in the area for about 16 years, and ever since I've lived in the area, this property's been vacant. But I've always wondered why, actually, given the area and what surrounds it. I would have expected that this property would be already developed. That being said, I mean, is there, I guess, a question to staff or to Mr. Tu? I mean, are there any other legitimate uses for the property have there been any permits filed ever in the history of this site that anyone's aware of?
Good question.
This is Nictarios Pitos again. Legitimate uses,
Within the context of the zoning, obviously, that, yeah,
The current entitlements are retail office.
right, and I'm saying, has there ever been anyone that stepped forward to develop this in the context of that zoning?
Not familiar with any applications for this
Okay.
location, but in terms of what it could be used for, would be commercial entitlements
Office.
consistent with C2 district,
Right.
which allows also C1, and then office uses.
Okay. Yeah, I just, again, from a property rights perspective and the like, it's, I have a difficult time denying this outright on the face. I wonder, there is an alternative motion that we have, that I wonder if the applicant would consider well, let me step back. So this is in the urban service area, so there is no height restriction on the development, is that correct?
That's accurate.
Okay. So would the applicant consider the alternative motion that's presented?
Joel Two and Associates for the applicant. You're probably talking about the second alternative, because I certainly would support the third alternative, which is to approve the conditions that we'd worked out with staff. Are you asking about the vertical mixed use option,
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes, sir.
I've discussed that with my client, and he firmly believes there is no present market for that product at this location. He would build it if he thought there was a market, because they do mixed-use projects, as he told you, and commercial.
Mhm.
But he honestly and legitimately sees no viability for vertical mixed use at that location. So we would have to respectfully decline that option, and obviously urge you to approve the third alternative, which is approval with the conditions staff had worked out with us previously. But thank you for the inquiry. We expected that, so I vetted that with the client yesterday thoroughly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's back to the board now. Is there any motions?
I move a motion to deny PC 9.
I'll second that. Okay, there's been a motion. Any discussion?
You have a quorum, you have 4 members.
Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Nay.
Aye.
3, 2, 1. Motion passes.
Just a point of order, Mr. Goldstein. So the fact that Mr. Williams announced his position in support of our proposal, that doesn't count before he departed the hearing?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't have affected the outcome because it would be 3-2.
No, but my question is, it's important to me in Vogt County.
Okay, well, he didn't actually vote. I understand that he expressed his position, but he wasn't here for an actual vote, so I don't think we can count a vote.
Second point of order, is the acting chairman allowed to second a motion under your rules of procedure?
I believe so, yes. I don't think there's anything that's stopping him from doing that.
And the third question, whether a resident of Seven Oaks was qualified under Snyder to vote on the matter, or whether he should have recused himself for lack of independence.
So I don't think he has any special private gain, and he's one of thousands of residents, and under the applicable AG opinions, if you're, around less than 1% of the affected residents, you don't have a special private gain or loss, so I don't think he's prohibited from voting.
Okay, and just for the record, by point of clarification, my point is not of pecuniary financial interest. It's his own statements, unprompted, that he had personal experience, information, and preconceived notions prior to the hearing. And I believe that violates the Snyder obligation to only consider competent substantial evidence presented at the hearing itself. So that's just for the record. I'm not here to argue it, but that's my point.
I understand your
legitimacy of that
position,
vote.
but I view that more as him just, these are his factual observations because he lives in the area, not because he has any preconceived notions. These are just factual observations from living in the area.
Thank you. I appreciate the response, and I guess someone else can decide that rather than you and me. Thanks.
I would also note that this is a recommending body, so I'm not sure that any procedural irregularity at this body is going to affect anything anyway.
I understand, and I'm just preserving it for the record, which you clearly also understand. Thank you.
Who was, can I ask a question? Who was the person that you're concerned about in having knowledge about the area?
Mr. Saez.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't quite sure. Could you
Yeah,
illustrate it?
I don't think you said anything specific enough and referred enough to historical or preconceived conclusions. So, Mr. Hansel, I did not presume to include you in that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. He took his notes with him, so that's why I'm a little lost. And some would say I'm lost all the time, but you know, it was hard. Okay.